All right. Hello, everybody. It is noon, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our event for this afternoon. This is Holiday Cultural Conversations. This is the second year we've done this virtual event, and the second year that we are joined by Tri-Faith. So we are going to start with just kind of some introductions. Our hope is that with this event, we maybe have some people who are normally an audience or visitors to the Durham Museum, and then some people who maybe are normally participators in programming by Tri-Faith, but maybe you aren't familiar with the other organization. So we want to start with a little bit of an introduction to just kind of who we are. So I will go first. My name is Abby. I am the Director of Education at the Durham Museum. And I wanted to start with just a little bit about the history of the building, because today we're really going to be focusing on kind of the word traditions here at the Durham for our part of the program. And we'll let several folks at Tri-Faith help us talk about kind of holiday traditions. So these are a couple of my favorite photos of Omaha's Union Station. So we were built as Omaha's Union Station in 1931 and remained a station until 1971. You can see some of the original pictures here, both from 1931 of the exterior of the building, and then also the interior of the building, which when I turn around in a little bit, you will see looks very similar to how it did in this picture. As far as a little bit about our organization today, our mission is to provide relevant educational and entertaining opportunities that exceed customer expectations and preserve our community's history. So there's a lot in that mission statement. I'm here representing the education department, and we're excited to do programming like this, field trips, adult tours, all of those exciting things. But then, of course, we have a collection and a preservation aspect to what we do as well. And then, of course, we have the events, especially this time of year, celebrating Christmas at Union Station, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. And then the final thing I wanted to mention in my introduction is that we are celebrating the 90th anniversary of the building this year. So I mentioned we started operating in 1931. The building started being built in 1929. It was a station for 40 years. And so we've now been a museum longer than we were a train station. And then just a few years ago, we became a National Historic Landmark. So we're very excited to celebrate our 90th anniversary of the building this year. And we have some kind of special elements of our Christmas at Union Station season to go along with that. So with that, I will turn it over to Allie to introduce Tri-Faith.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting Tri-Faith Initiative to be part of today's program. My name is Allie Zimmermoss, and I'm the Education and Program Associate at Tri-Faith Initiative. I've also brought along with me today some wonderful members of each of our 3 partner congregations, and I'll introduce them as their turns come up soon. On this slide, you can see the Tri-Faith Commons, which is what we call our campus, and that's how it looked sometime around spring or summer of 2020. We're located near 132nd and Pacific Streets right here in Omaha. And the Tri-Faith Center is the headquarters of Tri-Faith Initiative, which you can see on this slide on the top with all of the dirt around it, which now is grass and plants. Our Christian partner, Countryside Community Church, you can see on the left, at least a little bit on the left there, right above the Tri-Faith logo. Our Muslim partner, American Muslim Institute, is in the middle of this slide, right below the word Tri-Faith on there. So finally, our Jewish partner, Temple Israel, you can see here on the bottom right of your screen. In the middle of all of them is a circular path called Abraham's Bridge, which you are welcome to come and walk around the bridge whenever you'd like, if you'd ever like to visit the campus. So if I could get the next slide, please. Our campus is the only place in the world where a synagogue, church, and mosque all co-locate on one piece of land as neighbors. And as I mentioned, we have an interfaith center alongside those as well. All 4 buildings on our campus operate independently and are funded and run separately, but we all intentionally collaborate and work together through certain programs and on particular events and efforts. Tri-Faith Initiative is a 501c3 nonprofit that is led and run independently of our partners, and our organization focuses on bridging divides across different religions and different groups through a variety of efforts. If you'd like to learn more about the free programming that Tri-Faith offers or some of our other efforts, you can always visit our website, trifaith.org, which is just trifaith.org. Next slide, please. The seeds for Tri-Faith Initiative were planted in 2001 in the wake of 9/11. And after that, growing relationships among local faith leaders led to our nonprofit's founding in 2006, and then the purchasing of a piece of land for co-location in 2011. Until 2020, our mission was to get the buildings finished on this campus that we share and to make all these 4 buildings neighbors with one another and the communities that come with the buildings. Since then, we've been focusing on how to grow relationships and transform our communities on many different levels, and we hope that you can join us in this work. Next slide, please. All of this has led to our current mission and vision, where we strive to cultivate inclusive environments, to advance interfaith relationships and understanding, and become a best practice model, resource, and trainer for successful interfaith relationships and understanding. Today, I'm very excited that the Durham Museum has given us the opportunity to live out that mission and vision by introducing you to the religious holiday traditions that are observed throughout our campus. So first, we thought we would start with the representative on our campus that might be the most familiar to our community. So we have Mark Draper from Countryside Community Church, who will orient us to what's special about this time of year for their community. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thanks, Allie. I appreciate it. So I'm modeling for you all the hanging of the greens, which of course is what we do in a Christian tradition, particularly in a church with English forebears, if you will. So the Countryside United Church of Christ is deeply rooted in the Congregationalist movement, which is an English orientation post-Reformation. And the Congregationalists, if you will, were predating the Pilgrims and including the Pilgrims. So the holiday traditions that we have at Countryside are deeply rooted in our early Christian beginnings in coming to this country. And of course, in England prior to arrival into North America. So Countryside, as the Christian partner on the Tri-Faith community, welcomes all of our partners to our holiday activities. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the activity that passed around Thanksgiving time, where Countryside and our Jewish and Muslim partners have partnered for many years with the religious service that takes place on the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And this year that was at the Disciples of Christ Church across the street from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, where Christian, Jewish, and Muslim partners celebrated Thanksgiving, recognizing that the stories that we have of Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims and Indians in settling our country is looked at a little differently than we might have taught that lesson many years ago. And we certainly have learned to have a greater sensitivity toward our partners and our history than one did at one point in time. So beginning with Thanksgiving, the holiday season begins. And then the first Saturday before the beginning of Advent, which are the 4 Sundays preceding Christmas, we hang in our church the greens, celebrating the holiday season. So hanging of the greens is one of our first activities, and that's deeply rooted in English Christian traditions, where we prepare our sanctuary, our facility to represent the kinds of festivity we would like to represent in preparing for the coming of Christ, Christmas being the birthday of Christianity. In our church, after hanging of the greens, as I mentioned, we have 4 Sundays that we celebrate in advance of Christmas, and this is called Advent. And on each Advent Sunday, we light a candle, 4 candles surrounding a Christ candle in the middle, which celebrates Christmas. And so on those 4 Sundays, we anticipate and celebrate the Advent, the coming of Christ. And that Advent wreath and Advent candle is the symbolism of that activity. Now, celebratory activities leading up to Christmas at our church have some very unusual traditions. One of the first that we've had at Countryside, which clearly predates our relocation to the Tri-Faith campus, would be our jazz Christmas concert. One of our hallmarks of our church celebration is that we have a jazz quartet that plays for each of our 11 o'clock a.m. services. And these are outstanding union musicians in the Omaha area who add a jazz twist, if you will, to our holiday celebrations. And this coming year, our jazz celebration is going to be on Sunday, the 12th of December, and that is open and welcome to anyone who would have an interest in participating. You can go to the Countryside website and you would be able to see additional information on our jazz Christmas concert. Now, our history is also very well steeped in Christmas celebrations, if you will, Christmas programs, where very young children get an opportunity to participate in choirs. Our choir, adult choirs and youth choirs have an opportunity to sing. And of course, COVID has put an interesting twist on all of that, if you will. And this year, we're able to celebrate with masked performers, if you will, in that we have continued to be very vigilant in our activity in preparation for the Christmas season with COVID. And so this year, we will be having a Christmas concert. And that Christmas concert with the choirs will be on Sunday, the 19th of December at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's a long tradition in not only our Christian church, but in other Christmas churches, Christian churches, to have celebrations of this sort. So our music programs in the Christian church and at Countryside as well are oftentimes celebrated by performance of Handel's Messiah. In Omaha, the Messiah is typically performed annually. And at our church, we as well have included components of Handel's Messiah as part of that celebration and preparing for Christmas. Those holiday extravaganzas that I mentioned have a long tradition at Countryside from a period of time from the 1960s into the 70s, 80s, 90s, with large celebrations that were organized to prepare people for Christmas and get young children to understand our appreciation of Christmas being far more than simply a celebration and a visit by Santa Claus, if you will. So we're affording them that opportunity to learn and to celebrate and to find things that would be of interest to them. My own children in particular are fond of remembering this time of year when they were sheep, shepherds, wise men, and taking on a whole variety of roles in preparing for Christmas with a Christmas pageant that was popular for young children. Certainly one of our traditions that we have at Countryside. One of the things that's important for us to recognize too is that Christmas celebrations, being unique as they are to the Christian church, are the type of thing that we open our doors to all others to come and celebrate with us, where it may not be a tradition that you are accustomed to or used to. We invite folks to come and learn of our celebration by having an open and welcoming atmosphere for folks to learn more about the kinds of things that we're about at Countryside. So celebrations starting at Thanksgiving, hanging of the greens, preparing for Christmas incoming through programming, be it through music, be it through fellowship, and a welcoming attitude to anyone who would like to come and join us in the holiday season to learn more about Christian celebrations that take place this time of year. Allie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was wonderful to hear a little bit about Christmas at Countryside. So Abby, I believe you've got our next portion.
Yes, back to me. I've moved around so that you can have a good view of the Christmas tree. Some of you hopefully have already gotten to see our tree this time of year, but if you haven't, we certainly hope that you'll pop down. So as I mentioned, our goal for the Durham part of this program was just to kind of focus on some traditions that we have here at the museum or in the community as well. We've been talking a lot about traditions with our student groups as well, and all the different things that you can associate a tradition with, whether it's a religious holiday, something based on your family, or even your school. So I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen again. I'll talk a little bit about this year's tree, which you can see behind me. But I could not help but start with some historic photos of our Christmas trees throughout the years. It's one of my favorite things to look up in our photo archive. So the picture on the left here is one of the earliest pictures that I or our marketing team have found of Christmas at Union Station. So I mentioned that the building was complete in 1931. This photo is from 1939, but the tradition did start even earlier than that. Now, the tradition initially was that Union Pacific would harvest a tree. So it's always been a real tree, but that they would harvest a tree from along the railroad somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. So not from Omaha at all, probably specifically because they were looking to harvest it right on the railroad so that they could easily get it in the building. The picture on the right is from a little bit later, and you can kind of see that tree, at least in this picture from this angle, looks to be much smaller than in the 1939 picture. And I would argue that both are probably at least a little bit smaller, even the bigger one, than the trees we have nowadays. And I'll kind of get back to that in a second. So here's a great picture from the 1950s of Union Pacific unloading a tree from behind the building. So of course, this would have come in on the tracks. You can see the trees all wrapped up. This tree definitely looks to be a little bit smaller than probably the ones we have today. And some of you might not be familiar with how we get the tree in the building today. It's a whole production. Our marketing team does an awesome job of documenting it. So if you are on Facebook or Instagram and you haven't seen some of the videos, it's definitely worth checking out. But today, of course, we harvest the tree locally. And so this year's tree was donated by the family that founded and still operates Dinker's Bar and Grill here in Omaha. So it was very close to the museum. They planted the tree this year in 1986. And it's a really fun story if you haven't kind of read about it in any of the local media, because Rosemary, the wife of, she and her husband started the business, talks about how she can finally actually see the business from their house now because this big tree isn't blocking their side yard anymore. So today we have different methods of getting the tree in the building, of course. You can see a few pictures here from this year's tree harvest. So Union Pacific and several other local companies help us with lots of big equipment. They load it up onto this big flatbed truck that you see, and then we actually get a police escort down to the building, which I always thought is pretty cool. And if you're familiar with the building that the Durham is in, Omaha's former Union Station, this is the 10th Street side or the west side of the building. And so if you can see my mouse on the screen share here, this what looks to be this tiny little opening is actually 3 sets of double doors, and those come completely off, including the frame. And then the tree is hooked up to a pickup truck that actually drives right through the museum. So this is absolutely my favorite picture of this year. Besides getting in the doors, then the tree has to fit through this opening into the actual Great Hall. And so this is a beautiful picture that shows really how full this year's tree is. And then it is hoisted into place. So something that's, I think, kind of a little known fact about our tree, it does not really rest on the ground. So it does rest in a big trough of water. Just like if you do have a tradition at your house of having a Christmas tree, you might try to give it some water while it'll still take water in. We do the same here at the museum. But most of the weight is actually hanging from the ceiling. So it's hard to make out in this picture, but there's, I think right here in the picture, right in the middle, there's some kind of safety cables that you can see attached. Those come down while the tree is still sideways like this, and then they slowly hoist the tree into place. Then, of course, comes the decorating. So this is another picture from the 1950s. One of my favorites. At first, it doesn't look like anything too special. And then when you look closer, you might start to realize that that gentleman decorating the tree is in what looks to be a fairly average kitchen chair or dining room chair that is attached to cables of some sort. There's also a bucket hanging off of the side. And they're doing something with that year's tree. Nowadays, we use a little bit more official methods to decorate it. So you can see some photos here from this year's tree. Again, Union Pacific and Mangelsen's help us with that, as well as some of our museum volunteers prepare the ornaments ahead of time. So we use a big lift to decorate it. There's over 1,200 feet of lights on this year's tree. We got all new white lights this year for a little bit different look. And then it's believed that there's about 500 ornaments on the tree, and they range in size from, maybe 10 inches all the way to 3 feet long or tall. So that is just a little bit that I wanted to share about our tree. While it may have started as a Christmas tradition and celebrating Christmas at Union Station, some things have certainly changed about the tradition. I kind of jokingly say mostly our safety from how they used to do it in the 1950s. But the tradition itself remains, and we're really proud of how we kind of use this tradition now to bring together the community in lots of different ways, even people who maybe don't celebrate Christmas or celebrate another holiday. It's a beautiful time of year to visit. And then, of course, we get to partner with organizations like Tri-Faith and do things like this, where we get to really celebrate other cultures or other organizations in the community as well. So that is a little bit of information about the tree. I'm going to turn it back to Allie, and I believe Tri-Faith has another presenter for us.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Lisa Lewis from Temple Israel, which is the Reform Jewish synagogue on our campus. So we'll get to learn about major Jewish holidays. Lisa, I'm so glad you're here with us. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Allie. I'm glad to be here too. Normally at this time of year, we talk about holidays that have kind of associate or occur at the same time as Christmas. And so I always start out by saying that in spite of the fact that Hanukkah, which most people have heard of, occurs around the same time as Christmas, it is not Jewish Christmas. And but I'm going to talk about it anyway. It's not necessarily a major Jewish holiday, but it is, as I said, one that occurs at this time. Actually, the major Jewish holidays would be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are the Jewish New Year. And another one is Passover, which is most people probably have heard of one way or another, and it occurs in the spring, right around Easter time. But I will talk about Hanukkah, even though it isn't Jewish Christmas, because I often say there isn't a Jewish mother in the world, possibly maybe not in New York City, who hasn't been invited to their child's school sometime or other to explain Hanukkah right around Christmas time. So we always start out by saying Hanukkah is not Jewish Christmas, but it does occur around the same time of year. This year, Hanukkah actually began early. Well, as our rabbi always says, it's at the same time of year. It's always the 25th of Kislev in the Jewish calendar. It's just that it's early in the rest of our calendars that we live by. And so this year it began last Sunday, actually, and it continues for for 8 days. What actually Hanukkah commemorates is, well, and for those of you who may have been in school when someone's mother came to explain Hanukkah, it commemorates the victory of the Maccabees against, it was Judah Maccabee and his brothers, against the Syrian Greeks who wanted to have the Jews become pagans, I guess that was what happened at the same time. So the Maccabees won the battle, and then they had to rededicate the temple, the synagogue at the time. Part of rededication is to have oil burning constantly. And when they went to the temple, which was destroyed, they only found enough oil that would last one day, because it took a long time to process the oil to consecrate it so that it could be used in the synagogue. So they figured, well, we'll light the oil for one day. And as it turned out, it lasted 8 days. And so that's why Hanukkah is a celebration that lasts 8 days. And Jews always light a menorah, which is the candelabra, which has actually 8 candles. And each day of Hanukkah, we light one of the candles. So I'm just going to show you, this is show and tell. This is the menorah that I use, and that tonight is the 5th night of Hanukkah. All Jewish holidays start in the evening before the holiday. So this is the 5th night of Hanukkah. There are 5 candles. This one lights the others. It's called the shamas. And this is kind of a gonky looking, older looking menorah, because the oil or the candle, the wax drips all over. So we always have one that we light. I'll just show you a couple others, because it's kind of a nice tradition for Jewish families to collect pretty menorahs. Except we don't want to light them, because we'll get oil all over, or candle drippings all over them. So this one I particularly like. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it shows, it looks like a concertina, but it shows the city of Jerusalem on that side. On this side, it's just some pretty decorative flowers. It was from Israel. I thought that was a pretty one. And then I have one more, which I'll show just briefly, and it is, again, I don't like the candles in it, but this one commemorates, or it shows synagogues in Europe that in typical Jewish fashion, they were destroyed either through, at the time of the Holocaust, or at other times of, historically. But anyway, it's very pretty, and it has the back of it too, is also shows the backs of the synagogues in all the countries of Europe. So there are synagogues everywhere in Europe and many other places as well. I know one of the things that is a great discussion a lot at this time of year is the commercialization of Christmas, and the same with Hanukkah. Traditionally, in the past, children didn't get 8 gifts, and they didn't get lots of presents and things like that, and there was a lot of concern about whether you got the perfect gift. And well, in my parents' day, they just got some coins, chocolate around Hanukkah time, and that was about it. Of course, now we all buy presents and give the children a gift usually each day of Hanukkah. My son is older, so he just gets one nice little gift. But anyway, so that's sort of the history of Hanukkah. The big holidays that we celebrate are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are the Jewish New Year and the Day of Atonement. And those holidays occur this year. They occurred, it was September 6th, I believe, was the first night of Rosh Hashanah. It was September 6th to the 16th. And though that is a major Jewish holiday, it's not really related to any historical events. It is a biblical holiday, and it is a Jewish New Year, but there's no champagne, no hats and horns. The only horn you'll hear is the shofar, which is a ram's horn that is blown in a celebration of Rosh Hashanah. And the holiday, again, begins in the evening. Rosh Hashanah, because we're a Reformed congregation, we celebrate it one day. And the traditional food at this time is apples, or are apples and honey. So you'll eat apples dipped in honey, or my personal tradition is I make honey cakes for the world. So if you haven't had one of my honey cakes, let me know and I'll be glad to make one for you. Anyway, that is another traditional food at that time of year. And the holiday concludes with Yom Kippur, which is a Day of Atonement. It's a very introspective holiday. We consider, and actually we work on this for about a month before the holidays begin. It's a holiday of spirituality, morality, self-examination, doing good for others, trying to rededicate ourselves to being good people for the upcoming year, both to to ourselves, our families, our community. And it's it's a very lovely and again introspective holiday, because Yom Kippur is a day of fasting. We fast during the day, and then in the evening we have what's called break the fast, which we don't eat huge amounts of food, but it's just a nice kind of a family get together. And also the holiday is a synagogue-based holiday, so people go to services at synagogue. Our synagogue has some very creative services and things where we do it. Well, there's an order to things, but on the other hand, we also do some creative learning, and it's just a very beautiful holiday. The other major holiday that I'll talk about a little bit is Passover, which I think probably most of you would be familiar with too. That occurs in the spring in 2022. I'm just kind of looking at my notes here. I think it begins, it's April 15th is when it begins. Again, it's in the evening. At least that's the beginning, and it lasts for 7 days in our tradition. Easter, I believe, is the 17th. So most of the time people, when they think of Passover, know it to be possibly the Last Supper of Jesus, because it was kind of a Seder that he had his Last Supper at. So that's kind of how these two are associated, and they're very close in time. The Passover is often a little separated from Easter because we, again, are on a lunar calendar. Easter is also on a lunar calendar, but it's always on a Sunday. Ours starts a different time, and this year, or this next year, it's going to be on a Friday. That is actually a very festive holiday. You like to have, you like to be with family. The foods are very different. We eat matzah, which is an unleavened bread. We eat lots of different other types of foods. It's anyway, it's a very family-oriented holiday. And I think Mark had also mentioned with the pandemic, with COVID, it really has changed our celebration of holidays a lot. This year, we had my son was in Omaha. His wife stayed in New York. She has a very large extended family, which goes from coast to coast. And one of the family members is an actor and a writer in Hollywood. And so he wrote the Haggadah, which is the order of things that we read on Passover. And traditionally, we would go around the table and everybody would read. Since we couldn't get together, we did it on Zoom. So Zoom has come into traditional Judaism, as in all other religions and everything else. And it was really fun. He wrote parts for every single person, and we just did it kind of like this. We were all on Zoom, and everyone who read, spoke, and we all had our own seders. So it was unfortunate that we couldn't be together, but nonetheless, we had a wonderful experience last year. And I will mention a couple other things about one of the interesting things with Tri-Faith is historically before the pandemic, we kind of partnered with families of both Muslim and Christian families. And one year I had the Seder at my house. I had probably about 26 people for dinner, and including the Muslim and Christian families that I had partnered with. And it was a beautiful spring evening. The children were, some of the children were really young, and they were playing outside. And, I actually brought tears to our eyes. There were Muslim, Christian, Jewish children playing, having a wonderful time, enjoying the food, enjoying just being together. And it really made Tri-Faith it just kind of hit our hearts, because this is actually what it's all about, is that we get along, we can respect each other's religions and celebrations, but we can certainly partake and enjoy them as well. I just want to add another little Tri-Faith thing. One of the things that we do, or we had done historically, and I think we're starting up again, is for Rosh Hashanah. Again, I tell you, we have apples and honey. And so historically, with Tri-Faith, at the end of the Rosh Hashanah service, the members of Countryside and of the American Muslim Institute would come to our synagogue and hand out little cups of honey with apples in them at the end of the service. It was just lovely. And then at Eid, and maybe Abdul will mention this too, we would also partner with the mosque, and we would hand out dates at the end of Eid so that people can enjoy them. And we also were able to learn about that holiday. But it is coming back, because this year on Christmas Eve, we've already gotten notice that we are going to be able to go to Countryside Community Church after the end of the Christmas Eve service, I believe, and hand out candy canes. So again, a wonderful tradition that Tri-Faith has initiated, and it's very enjoyable for everybody. So that is all I have to say, and I will turn it back to you, Allie.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Those were some beautiful images that you gave. Now back to Abby for another snippet from the Durham.
Thank you very much, Allie. So I have completely moved to a different part of the museum. I am downstairs by one of I guess you could call it a new tradition within the last couple years. This is something that we actually also started the first Christmas season after COVID, so just last year. And it is a collection of cases and decor and information from other organizations here in Omaha. So this year, we were lucky to have 6 who were able to participate. I'm only going to have time to highlight a couple, but kind of in the spirit of today's event and what we're calling the Holiday Cultural Conversations, I've chosen 2 that really do the work of thinking about cultural heritage or kind of the heritage and history of certain populations in the Omaha community. So the first one I want to show you, I'll get a little bit closer here, is the display by the Great Plains Black History Museum. And so if you have not been or aren't familiar, they're located in the Jewel Building, which was originally the Dreamland Ballroom, which you can see pictured here. And then if I move my camera a little bit, you can see one of the things they have displayed is kind of a blown up version of a ticket from the Dreamland Ballroom. So the display also features other items that go back to really that rich history on North 24th Street in the jazz era in Omaha. This was perfect timing for us because actually this Saturday we're opening an exhibit all about kind of the life and legacy of Billie Holiday. And it's photography that was taken of her. So we're super excited to kind of hopefully work with the Great Plains Black History Museum a little bit during that exhibit. At the same time, they're actually going to have an exhibit on display about the Dreamland Ballroom. So while they're located in the original building, you can go learn even more about it. That ticket is actually from a concert in June of 1954 when Fats Domino was here in Omaha. And tons of music icons like Dizzy Gillespie and Ruth Brown played at different locations, plus a ton of what they refer to in their information that goes with this display. They refer to it as homegrown musicians that were from Omaha. So lots of big names came through, but just as importantly, there were a ton of people who kind of came up in their music careers here in Omaha and really helped give Omaha a reputation for that place for jazz music. Like I said, we have 6 this year, so I'm going to move us this way. We won't quite have time to talk about all of them, but I'll give you a little sneak preview and also make sure I'm not making you dizzy as we walk by. But then I also wanted to show you this beautiful display. This is a display created by El Museo Latino here in Omaha. So again, if you have not visited that organization, they are over just off South 24th Street. They chose colors and decor that represented the Christmas season. Kind of in Mexico and other parts of Central and South America, they kind of focused on their information and the look of their display this year on the piñata and talking about how the piñata comes to play in Christmas celebration. So similar to what Lisa was talking about with kind of the commercialization of holidays, my niece just had her 6th birthday and she had I think it was a Disney movie of some reference piñata, but we forget about the rich history that the piñata has And some people are, I think, surprised to learn when they visit this display or learn about it at El Museo, the tie to the Christmas season. And so while each country, maybe in some Latin American communities might have a little bit different traditions. Like I said, El Museo kind of focused on the piñata and how that helps in some different celebrations. So in their information, they talk about how the Christmas season begins with traditions associated with what's called the Posadas, which is a reference to the Christian biblical story of Christmas when Mary and Joseph had to ask for a place at the inn. So the Posadas are celebrated from December 16th to the 24th, and that is the same every year. And it's celebrated with traditional foods, music, dance, and then, of course, also the tradition of a piñata that holds candy and gifts for the children. And that celebration continues through to January 6th, which is known as Three Kings Day. That is celebrated with a special bread called Rosca de Reyes, or King's Ring, and followed by, again, a breaking of the piñata for children. I will do a little plug that in their information they provided, El Museo does present a Posada celebration annually, which of course includes a piñata. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Allie. And I believe we have one final guest. And then I will, real quick before Allie takes over, I will say we're kind of right on time here. I'm very impressed with all of our speakers today. And so we should have time for some questions at the end, either for Allie or myself, or for any of our 3 additional guests from Trifaith. So if you want to put those into the chat at any point in the next little bit, we're happy to take questions after this. Go ahead, Allie.
All right, thank you. Finally, I am so happy that we have Abdul Maki here from American Muslim Institute, which houses the mosque on our campus. So Abdul will tell us about the major Muslim holidays. Abdul, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, happy Hanukkah, and I believe it's Advent too. So happy Advent, if that's a phrase. So my name is Abdul, and I'm a board member with the American Muslim Institute, aka AMI, and I'm here to talk about Islamic holidays. So Muslims have 2 holidays. The major holiday first is called Eid al-Adha, which means Feast of the Sacrifice. And that holiday comes after the 10th day of the pilgrimage in Mecca. And we celebrate, that holiday because our prophet Abraham, completed, the pilgrimage, and also he was selected, by God to test his faith by offering, to sacrifice, his son Ishmael. Now, in Jewish and Christian tradition, it is Isaac, but in our tradition, it is Ishmael, because Ishmael was the oldest son. So once, Abraham, fulfilled his duty to, just about, sacrifice Ishmael, that's when God sent down, the lamb, and diverted Abraham's attention towards, the lamb, and said that he has fulfilled his covenant. So that holiday is our major holiday. So Islamic holidays typically start at the mosque. We have congregational holiday prayers, which involve, loud supplications and chanting, and followed by the actual prayer. The mosques, wherever you go in the country, in the world, are like at that time, are filled to way over capacity. Now, prior to COVID, AMI, we used to have at least, 500 to 600 people, okay, attending, our prayer services. And prayer services at the mosque is such that we pack people in literally like sardines, because you are required to stand shoulder to shoulder with, little room, okay? However, during COVID, that changed. We did have, 2 holiday prayers, right after COVID. And, we had to maintain, distances, at first. Our first congregational holiday prayer occurred this year right after Ramadan. So we only had capacity for 100 people. So we had to pray, but we had to be, minimum 3 feet apart from, each other. Our next holiday is called Eid al-Fitr. It means it's the end of, Ramadan. It's the breaking of the fast. Now, Ramadan is our holiest month. It is the 10th month, of the lunar year. And Ramadan, we have to fast. It is a fasting month where we have a total fast. No liquids, no food, nothing goes in your mouth, all during the daylight hours. So from the break of dawn to, sunset. Now it is a lunar, meaning that Ramadan can come in, during, the winter months, summer months and fall months. So this past year, Ramadan occurred in, the end of March around, time frame. So when you fast for, 30 days, right, and you can only eat, after the sun sets. So Ramadan is a family month, is a social month. It is also a charitable month. Think of, Ramadan as 30 days of Thanksgiving. And I'm not joking with that, because prior to COVID, each night would be a feast. It is communal. So it is quite common for families to invite friends, relatives, over. And the food spread can be like a 7-course or 10-course with your soups and salads and your main entrees and your, desserts and your coffees and your teas and your sweets. So, when people, ask me, what is Ramadan like? I literally say it's 30 days of, Thanksgiving. Now the celebration is also the same, okay? Holiday prayers. And also too, what we do at AMI, during the holidays is we have, treats for our congregation members. We set up, outside, okay, weather permitting. We bring them, we provide, treats. And if you have not seen a, Islamic holiday at AMI, I really, encourage you and welcome you to come and see us, because if you want to see, traditional clothing at its, finest, come. You will see the Southeast Asians, the Africans, the Middle Easterners, the Eastern Europeans, all dressed in their garb. everybody is happy. Everybody is, hugging each other. Well, prior to COVID. Now we just, fist bump each other. But you will also hear, many languages, of the world, spoken, as well, during our celebration outside and, passing out all the, treats and stuff. Now, I did hear Lisa say that, one, year they were there passing out dates. Now, dates are a tradition because, dates help, soothe and prepare your digestive system, okay, prior to, eating. But Lisa, next year, please skip the dates and give us large fries and a Big Mac, cheeseburger, because, we really look forward to that because, eating, dates for 30 straight days, you kind of don't want to eat it again on a holiday. But a little bit about our faith is, we have 5 pillars of faith, and in order, they are the profession, of faith, meaning that you swear that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is his messenger. Second is prayers. Muslim pray 5 times a day for 365 days. We pray dawn, afternoon, late afternoon, sunset, and night prayer. The next one is alms, charity. And charity can also take on a meaning of, volunteering and helping those, in addition to obviously, money and donations. And then the next one is fasting. So fasting is required on all adults that can physically and healthily fast, okay? If, you are sick, if you are pregnant, if you are menstruating, if you have an illness that requires you to eat and, drink, then you cannot fast. And the last one, obviously, is the pilgrimage to Mecca. This year, Ramadan occurs in April, and the holiday is projected to be on May 3rd, and Eid al-Adha will be on July 10th of 2022. So our major holiday is the holiday of the sacrifice, okay? And then, the holiday right after Ramadan is the, minor holiday, if you will. So that's pretty much it on Islamic holidays. So thank you. And honestly, feel free, to visit AMI, the Tri-Faith communities, in campus, we all have an open door policy. So feel free to, swing by and say hello and have a date or 2 or 3.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to hear about the Muslim holidays as well. So thank you. Now, Abby, I think we are in our last 5 or 6 minutes and have time for maybe a question or 2.
Yeah, let's see. So there was a question that came into the chat for Lisa Linda asks, on the menorah, there's room for 9 candles. If you could talk about what the 9th one in the center, why is it raised significantly, and kind of why is it raised and what's the significance of it is what I was trying to say. Sorry. Oops, sorry, I have to unmute you. There you go.
There. Yes, and I did answer that in the chat, but that is, all menorahs have those. And I think she was pointing out in this one in particular, I'll hold it up again, the one in the middle is called the shamus. It's either in the middle or on the end, on the side, which was the one that I light. And that's that just means that that's the one you light first, and then you light the other candles with that one. So but there 8 candles signify the 8 days of Hanukkah, and the shamus is just the one that you light the others with. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is for Allie. So Allie, if you could talk a little bit about who founded Tri-Faith and kind of how it was founded.
Absolutely. So I know I went through that a little bit quickly in the slideshow for the sake of time, but in 2001, when some of the seeds were being planted for Tri-Faith, Rabbi Azriel, who was the rabbi of Temple Israel at the time, brought his congregants to guard the local mosque that I believe was the Islamic Center of Omaha, since American Muslim Institute did not exist yet. And that started some conversations between the Jewish and Muslim communities of Omaha. Now they thought it would be beautiful to bring in a Christian partner as well, once they got to talking and thinking that they should have a campus that has all these 3 religions as neighbors. And so initially they were asking around and got the Episcopal Diocese of Nebraska to say yes and agree to it. After a little bit, it turned out that there were some obstacles that the Episcopal Diocese identified that would prevent them from building a new church on the campus. And so they started doing their own research and reached out to Countryside Community Church, which was at the time located near Westside High School, and invited them to take their place as the Christian partner with Temple Israel and with the Muslim community that was going to become American Muslim Institute. So from there, they had Countryside, they had some of American Muslim Institute's founders, and they had Temple Israel, who all signed on to take on the project. And from there, it was a matter of raising funds to build the buildings, which were completed. Temple Israel was completed in 2013. American Muslim Institute was completed in 2017. And then Countryside Community Church was completed in 2019. And then finally, to cap it all off, the Tri-Faith Center, where Tri-Faith Initiative is housed, was completed just last year in 2020. And so, like I mentioned at the beginning when I was talking, for Tri-Faith Initiative side, now we're pivoting to moving from the building of the buildings to a new future where we get to focus on building interfaith relationships, helping people to understand religious diversity better, and all sorts of good things like that. So I hope that helps fill out some of the founding story a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I think we just have a couple minutes left. So I think Allie and I were both hoping to kind of provide a little bit of a conclusion or just kind of upcoming things that you all can participate in if you're interested. Allie, do you want to go first?
Sure. So on Tri-Faith's end, we have a couple of upcoming events still in December. Tonight, there is a program called Abraham's Whiteboard, where one of our board members, Professor or Dr. Paul Williams of UNO, is going to talk about the historical context behind the Christmas story. And then next week, we're going to have an event just looking back on this year with the staff of Tri-Faith Initiative during the lunch hour next Thursday, I believe. And then finally, we also have one of these Tuesdays, a session of Making the Familiar Strange, which is something that looks at scriptural texts, where we're going to have a member of Countryside Community Church talking about the dreams of Joseph of Nazareth. So we're a little bit heavy on the Christian side to coincide with the Christmas holidays this month, but for any of these events, you can just go to trifaith.org, trifaith.org, to register. And Abby?
Thank you. So for our part at the Durham, we have pretty much everything that I showed you today. Our big Union Station tree, which is the largest indoor tree in Omaha and Omaha's official tree. That is up through January 9th, I believe is that Sunday, as well as the Season's Greetings exhibit that I showed you just a little bit of, but there's definitely more to check out there. And then less kind of on the holiday front, we do have a couple of special exhibits open right now. We have the Billie Holiday photography exhibit that I mentioned will open on Saturday, and we actually have a small show that goes kind of alongside that that talks about Omaha's jazz history. But then we also have another photography exhibit right now with called 40 Chances. That's the photography of Howard Buffett, and that is also open through January. So lots to kind of check out during our Christmas at Union Station season. Our website is durhammuseum.org, and just like Tri-Faith, you can register or buy tickets or anything that you're interested there. So I do not see any additional questions. This is the most timely panel I've ever hosted, but it was also extremely interesting. So thank you all so much from Tri-Faith and the three congregations associated for joining. Thank you, Allie, for helping me plan this, and thank you all for attending. Have a great day.